Shalom. This week we read Acharie Mos Kedoshim, and this Torah comes from Acharie Mos. To those that study the Torah, a key principle of the Torah is that it isn't repetitive. While one might find the same mitzvah repeated many times, or the same warning against idolatry listed repeatedly, students of the Torah know that each listing teaches something new. The Torah wouldn't have to include the same warning over and over if it wasn't teaching something new each time. Rambam opened his Mishnah Torah with the words, "The foundation of all foundations and the pillar of wisdom is to know that there is a primary being who brought into being all existence." The existence of God is the most important point of Judaism. There is a mitzvah to maintain that there is a God, and to fulfill that mitzvah, a person must have conviction, not just blind faith, that there is a God. The first statement of the Ten Commandments is that I am Hashem, your God. Rambam, among others, counts this statement as the first mitzvah of the 613 mitzvahs, the mitzvah to have conviction that there is a God. That makes a pasuk in this week's Torah portion curious. It states, Hashem spoke to Moshe and said, "Speak to the Israelite people and say to them, I am Hashem, am your God." This seems to be an exact repeat of the first statement of the Ten Commandments, and leads the Torah student to ask, what's its purpose in this week's Torah portion? In his commentary to this pasuk, Rashi wrote that Hashem was saying the following. This is a long comment. He said, "I am he who spoke at Mount Sinai, saying, I am the Lord your God, and whose kingship you then accepted. Since you accepted my kingship then, therefore now you must accept my decrees." Rashi continued to quote Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, who taught, "It was known to Hashem that in the days of Ezra, the Jews would ultimately revolt against the many laws that restrict sexual relations that are listed in this week's Torah portion. Hashem therefore came to the Jewish people with a decree against illicit sexual relations, emphasized by the words, I am the Lord your God," meaning to warn the Jews, understand well who it is that imposes this decree upon you, the divine judge whose function it is to punish, but who is certain to give a reward. Rashi understood the pasuk that stated, I am Hashem, in this week's Torah portion, not to be teaching about God's existence, as the pasuk in the Ten Commandments taught, but rather about the mitzvos and why it was important that the Jewish people observe the mitzvos, especially those that are listed in this week's Torah portion about illicit sexual partners and practices. Why was it necessary for Hashem to remind the people that it was Hashem who decreed laws of illicit sexual practices and partners? It is interesting that Hashem introduced the prohibitions of illicit sexual partners and practices by reminding the Jews that he was the one who decreed them, and by warning, you shall not copy the practices of the land of Egypt where you dwelt, or of the land of Canaan to which I am taking you, nor shall you follow their laws. Why were both warnings necessary as an introduction to the laws of illicit sexual practices? Here's the answer. Sexual mores are fickle depending on the society and the time one lives. There are few sexual taboos that every society in all times accept. Even what today's global community considers repulsive sexual behavior was considered normal in past societies and will undoubtedly be considered acceptable once again in the future. God warns the Jewish people that sexual morality isn't defined by the place and times we live, but by God. These laws are unchanging, and Jews should never look to the society around them to define what is and isn't acceptable. It's a lesson about the entire Torah, but especially about sexual norms. Shabbat Shalom.